So about a week ago, I got my hands on a new game that's coming out in early 2016 that some of you might have heard of or seen some stuff from, and that's an MMO called Blade and Soul. It's a free-to-play Korean MMO that's been out in Korea, China, Japan, Russia, and Taiwan for around 3 years now. It's nothing new to the eastern region of the world, but it's only now coming to the West, North America and Europe, in early 2016. There's a series of 5 closed beta tests that players can participate in leading up to 2016, the first of which occurred last weekend, or 2 weekends ago, I guess, since today's Monday. But after seeing a lot of hype surrounding the game, I decided to participate in it, and holy fish moly, this game was incredibly fun. It's an MMO. It's a beta. Let me just have a little disclaimer here. I can't really speak for the entire game. I only experienced a fraction of it, and I'm sure a lot of stuff will be changing before the full release. But from what I got to see, especially everything surrounding the combat and the PvP, this game is seriously the most fun and addicting game I've played since I first picked up League of Legends 5 years ago. The PvP especially really has me hooked. I mean, I want to climb in rating and get super good as soon as it comes out. The PvP is balanced around 1v1s. It actually seems really balanced and fair, and has a really fast, satisfying combat system with a ton of depth. I mean, if you get a good combo or play well against someone, you know it's because you outplayed them. And the same goes if someone gets a good combo on you. You either fucked up or they just outplayed you. There's this really cool 3v3 system too that's still 1v1s. It's like a Marvel vs. Capcom thing or something where you still get the 1v1s, but players can tag in and out and also have an option to interfere with the fight briefly. There's like a lot of strategy, it seems, that goes into who's going to 1v1 who, when you tag out, when you should interfere, and making sure you blow all your cooldowns before tagging out, so you get your big abilities off cooldown before you leave, and then you get them all back when you tag in or interfere or whatever. The game is seriously the most fun I've had PvPing in an MMO, and maybe the most fun I've just had PvPing in an online game in general. It really has me hooked in my first weekend of play, and it got me excited for the next closed beta test, which is coming up this weekend. Anyway, the reason I bring this up today is because this really got me interested in looking at all the PvP games I play and trying to dissect what it is that makes one really click with me. Specifically, I've been thinking about League of Legends a bit and thinking about what it is I loved so much about League of Legends when I first started playing. It's no secret to you guys that a lot of older League of Legends players are a little disenchanted with the current state of the game. The way that I've been putting it for many other older players like myself is I still love League of Legends, but I'm no longer in love with League of Legends. This can be seen, I'm sure, with all your favorite YouTubers and streamers. I'm sure you guys have been seeing a lot of them moving away from the game, especially the older crowd, sometimes outright quitting, like in Donkey's case, but sometimes just making videos on stuff that's not League related, or trying to escape from the game in the sense like that, maybe sometimes just not playing it as much in their free time. But after playing Blade and Soul, it really made me take a look at League and think about what it is that captivated all of us when we first picked it up, and maybe what it is that's changed compared to today's state of the game 5 years later. Back when I first started playing the game in Season 1, I and many others got hooked on the formula that League brought as a PvP game and an esport. League really did feel like the first time there was a game that had an equal importance shared between 1v1 skill and team play. Now, I don't want to disparage Counter-Strike or hell, even Halo, or like any other team-oriented esport or competitive game that may have had a similar dynamic, but there was just something about League of Legends that made every puzzle piece fall into place and make a brilliant game in that kind of sense. To many of us, League really did feel like the first game where you both had to be good on your own and in a team. In Season 1, Season 2, and maybe even a little bit of Season 3, you had all these patches where the game was so focused on laning phase. The meta hadn't really evolved beyond laning phase, so you didn't have a huge focus or dependency on your teammates and being able to go and do TP ganks and roam around the map. And no, you just sort of tried to outplay people 1 versus 1. A player's skill was often measured by their ability to outplay people 1 versus 1 in certain matchups in mid lane or top lane or in the jungle, or of course 2v2 down bot lane. AKA being able to outplay your opponents to win was maybe the most important thing that you needed to have as a player, the most important trait, before the game gradually transitioned into the mid and late game where you would group up with your team and you would take Baron, maybe an inhib, a few towers, and then push to win for taking down the Nexus. I don't want to speak for everyone, but it was this formula that really made the game exciting for me and a lot of older players like myself, where it had the dynamic and teamwork of a traditional team sport that you now had in an esport, but it also still had that sense of individuality. You got to outplay people on your own and be recognized for your success on your own. I would argue this is why a lot of older players were known and feared for their ability to use single champions, specifically in laning phase, and outplay people 1 versus 1. Hotshot GG and his Nidalee being the oldest and most known example, but you also had Westrice with his Akali, you had Doublelift with his Blitzcrank and Poppy, Wicked with his Aurelia, Chaox with his Aurelia, Althora and his Malzahar. You had a lot of instances where a lot of these older players were able to change the course of a game through their dominance in laning phase and their ability to outplay people 1 versus 1. As time went on, though, things gradually got pretty different. Metas started evolving. The game became much more team-oriented and less about the individual throughout the years. The first instance where this was really the case, I believe, was sometime around Season 2 when CLG and Hotshot GG first invented the idea of lane swapping. If you had a bad matchup, or if you really wanted to mess up an enemy top laner for whatever tactical reason, you could do so in a 2v1 lane swap with a strong top laner who was skilled enough to 1v2 in the bottom lane. This was something that was pretty unusual to see at the time. Back then, it was just ingrained as law that you sent your duo lane bot lane so you would always have the most players available to take dragon. When CLG first brought this strategy into the competitive scene, you had a lot of people that were kind of taken aback by it, and it wasn't long before everyone started innovating in their own similar way. Teams started thinking more and more about the strategies they could use beyond just laning for 30 minutes and then grouping to push. Today's current state of the game is a result of all those innovations, where you see teleport on most top laners that can TP gank bot lane and make more team fights happen in the mid and early game, mid laners that are much more mobile and prone to roaming or taking teleport in the same fashion, compared to the mid laners of old like Anivia and Karthus, who literally just wanted to AFK farm for 50 minutes and get those 1 versus 1s. Nowadays, you have a state of the game where things are so much more team-oriented and so much less individualistic compared to those times of old. I mean, it's true now more than ever. Just last preseason, we had all those changes to make the new Dragon and Baron so much more valuable, so many more people started running TP so we could have all these team fights instead of 1v1ing in laning phases. I mean, I believe it's this contrast that started to drive some of the older players to grow a little frustrated and maybe a little tired of the way the game's been changing. These changes haven't all been good. Some have led to some pretty frustrating developments that further push those players who enjoyed the older state away. I mean, teleport makes it so much less punishing if you die 1 versus 1 in lane, since you can just teleport back and miss a 0 CS, further getting rid of that 1v1 importance. But honestly, in the end, I think I've been going about this the wrong way. Personally, I feel like I'm starting to turn into that old racist grandpa, but for video games. You know what I mean? Like, you guys know how sometimes you have older relatives that have backwards ideas sometimes because they grew up in a time where those ideas were a lot more commonplace, racism or homophobia or whatever it is. It's the explanation I give for Nintendo not understanding how modern internet stuff like YouTube works. But anyway, I feel like I'm starting to turn into that old racist relative. I'm thinking that just because I grew up in a time that was different or matured as a player in a time that was different from now, that means the ideals I held from that time must have been right. I'm not going to change with the years. League of Legends might not be able to give those kinds of enjoyment that a lot of older players took away from the game anymore. Maybe it will never be that kind of fun again, but I still think there's something out there that is fun about League. When you play a game with an open mind, you find it fun if there's fun to be had. It'll get you addicted, excited, if you're open-minded and willing to accept that you don't know how you're going to enjoy something if you're going to enjoy it. I've been trying to have that open-minded mentality recently with League, and you know what? I've actually been liking it a lot more. I've stopped playing top lane outside the occasional Aurelia pick. I've been playing more mid lane and AD carry a ton, enjoying the new roles, experiencing new roles and new tactics, and I'm excited as hell for the new season so I can start streaming that ranked climb again over on Twitch. Today I want to encourage any other older players out there who might have quit League for the wrong reasons to adopt a similar mindset. League really might not be able to give us that kind of enjoyment that we got from outplaying scrubs 1 versus 1 anymore. Maybe it won't ever give us that kind of enjoyment again, but it's still a hell of a lot of fun and has a lot of cool elements about it that I think I, at least, was ignoring for far too long. Anyway, though, I hope you guys all enjoyed watching today's video. I will, of course, see you all soon, but until next time, thank you very much for watching. Good luck in solo queue, and Godspeed.